Hey, psyc250 students, it's your old favorite neighborhood Spider-Man back with a couple announcements before we get into Chapter 8's lecture. First thing, most importantly, another pen bit the dust. Ink pen number 652, which I believe is my sixth ink pen I've used. Here we are, going into week 8. Essentially next week would be 8 week. We're in week 7, so almost one pen per week. Just a note on your paper submissions, extra credit, relay papers. If you could put it in the Word doc, it's easier for me to read and assess. But if that's not possible, I'll accept it any way I can, except for telepathically. My head's full of all kinds of things at this time of the year, so hard for me to pick up on your papers mentally, but other forms is just fine. Okay, so after Chapter 8's lecture, around March 26th, you're going to be sent the exam. It's 10 questions, essay answers. You'll have almost a week to submit it. My advice to you is to write the answers down, feel satisfied that your answers are all very thorough, because they're all 5 points each, and send it back to me as soon as possible. You know, like I know, if you wait to the last minute, something will happen. Technology won't be working, you'll leave it in your draft section, something will happen and you will lose 50 points. Right? And you're like, man, I should have done that extra credit. Not many of you are doing the extra credit, which is really smart, I think, just in case stuff happens, right? I've gotten many submissions from Chapter 6, 7, and even 8 so far. Some of you are not responding to anything, not sending in anything so far. So that's making me a little nervous. I'm wondering if you're even looking on Canvas, getting any emails, or have you blocked me? All right. Hopefully things will all work out. Hopefully we can regroup and living beings. I saw a couple of you already arrived. It's Monday and the 23rd, and turned in some papers, got some donuts. Didn't know about the yum-yums. They're here. Got 2 dozen. Only a couple of them are gone. So if you're listening to this and it's still Monday before noon, come on down and get yourself a donut, drop off a paper, and I've gotten a few extra credit gift cards already, so thank you. All right, let's proceed to one of my favorite topics to talk about, suicide. And during these trying times, maybe it is kind of a relevant topic to talk about, such a drastic thing. I think of suicide as a pretty permanent phenomenon. Now you can see it's an intentional, direct, conscious taking of one's own life. So it's not like I accidentally fell off the cliffs without my web shooters. No, this is an actual attempt on my life, purposefully. Now the question is, why would people do this, right? It says of the people that contemplate, about 90% have a mental illness. It's my personal opinion that 99% of us think about suicide at some point in our life. Now, do we actually take action on that? That's another story, right? So, by the way, 99% think about it. The other 1% is lying about it. In other words, all of us have, whether it's a fleeting moment or an actual serious thought about what would happen if I killed myself. Would anybody miss me? Would anybody care? That sort of thing. Most people do not want to commit suicide. They just want the pain, the suffering to end, right? Whatever the circumstances. That's why sometimes you'll have somebody jump off a building, and one of the last things they do is they reach out for somebody. Now they're not saying, hey, I'm going, so I'm taking you with me, right? They're more or less like, I don't really want to die. Please hold on to me. Don't let me go. So you have to be careful when you're around people who are jumping off buildings. Inadvertently, they may pull you off, not meaning to do so. Somebody's drowning, you're trying to save them. Lifesavers have to be careful, those folks that take the courses, to make sure that they don't get pulled and drowned underwater while they're trying to save somebody else, right? So let's talk about some of the gender differences, right? And let's talk about some of the reasons why people commit suicide. First, there's some risk factors, right? If you're into abusing substances, obviously sometimes you're hiding other issues. A prior suicide attempt, if at first you don't succeed, try again. There isn't a suicide class we offer here on campus, but online you can get all kinds of tips as to how to tie a rope, how many pills to take. I mean, that's one of the byproducts of freedom of speech. People that feel depressed or ever having a mood disorder, a lot of people think that depression is guaranteed for suicide, and that's not true, but certainly there's a correlation. Feelings of hopelessness, aggressive antisocial behavior, family history of suicide behavior. Some people think that suicide is genetically passed on. It's not, but what is? Depression, right? Shame, humiliation, fear, rejection, and availability of a firearm. So this leads us to our gender differences, right? Who's more likely to attempt suicide, men or women? What's your answer to that? Actually, the answer is women. Women are more likely to attempt. Who's more likely to be successful, men or women? Actually, men. Should we high five on that, fellas? No, this is not a reason to high five. We can't go around and say, we beat you, as women would say. Okay, that's all right. We don't want to win that victory. Why is that the case? Lethality. It doesn't mean that you cannot die if you take a bunch of pills. You can die, but you're more likely to die if you hang yourself or if you shoot yourself, right? More lethal methods is what men typically do. Now, warning signs. Withdrawal from contact with others. Every week we go to see a movie. In the last 4 weeks, you've called me and said, let's go see this, let's go see that. I make excuses. Something's up. This is not my normal thing. I love movies. I'm in them. Not me personally, but other people playing me. Sudden swings in mood. I could be depressed, and suddenly I'm happy. Now, you may misinterpret and think, oh, he's finally out of his funk. But why am I certainly happy right now, but I'm still suicidal? Well, one of the answers might be is I've already decided to kill myself this Saturday. So that's why my mood is elevated. I'm relieved. I don't have to debate over it. It's a done deal. Life crisis, emotional shock, the straw that broke the camel's back. Just one more thing adds to it. A personality change. I see me change drastically. I start giving away all my prized possessions. I start giving you all my Spidey gear. Here's my mask. Here's my gloves. Here's my suit. Why would I be giving that away? I won't need it where I'm going. Depression, aggression, risk-taking. Some people don't kill themselves. What they actually do is they get somebody to kill them. For example, I'm driving down the 5 freeway and the police are chasing me, and I stop my vehicle, jump out of the car, and I run towards them with ink pen number 653. Now it's nighttime and they just see something in my hand, so you know they're going to take me out. They didn't know it was Professor Pedrosa with an ink pen in his hand, right? So I've just committed suicide, but in this case, suicide by cop. I have a preoccupation with death. I'm always talking about it, constantly wondering, who would care? And I have direct threats to commit suicide. A lot of times we think, well, the people that talk about suicide, they're just kind of like the boy who cried wolf, right? They just want the attention. In actuality, they're telling you a message there. And then we have to live with the consequences when we realize we didn't listen to them. We didn't pay attention to what they were telling us. They constantly told us. Now, a small percentage actually leave notes, but most people have signs that they are going to end their lives. We should take these things seriously. What are the more common reasons why people think about suicide or why they attempt? Now, the red is actually just thoughts. The gray area is actual attempts, and you can see some of the common themes. Some of them we mentioned already. Loneliness, hopelessness, general depression, partner problems, helplessness, grade issues, parent issues, money issues. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of my students are going through right now, right? All the time. But we don't all contemplate suicide. And if you are, then please, please seek out help. Tell people. Call a mental health clinic. Call the emergency room and say, what should I do? Call the police department. Call somebody so they can get you some help. Right? So, females have higher rates of suicide thoughts and attempts. Death from suicide occurs much more frequently amongst males, as you can see. Males tend to choose more lethal methods, and drug overdose, poisoning are the typical means that women will kill themselves. Women don't have as much access to firearms, right? And we can see how society kind of feeds into this role. It doesn't mean that women aren't successful or men fail in their attempts, right? It's the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And we don't talk about it enough. Most of the time we're left with trying to figure out why. Why did this happen? What were the situations that led to this person to get to this point? And of course we're left with a lot of guilt after the fact. We have a lot of people that attempt suicide each year. And a lot of failures, which is good. We don't want people to succeed at this. But guess what? People will try again if they're bound and determined. Now, short of locking somebody up 24/7 and keeping an eye on them at all times, there's very little we can do with somebody who's bound and determined to kill themselves. Young people do it more. Young people have less of a feeling of control over their lives. We have a significant number of elderly that feel like they're useless in society. They're invisible. They can't function the way they would want to. So they will so-called accidentally overdose. That's how a lot of death certificates are written for young people and older people. Accidental overdose of substances, when we kind of have a suspicion that some of those are actually suicides. I mean, some people do make mistakes and accidentally overdose, forget to take the medication. Did I take it? And they take a double dose, and that might do them in. But most folks they know exactly what they're doing, right? College students, I just keep on giving you this great news. Second leading cause of death among college students. And the rate might be 25 to 30% higher. Why? Because of what I mentioned before. Some are not actually written as suicides. For example, automobile accidents. We know that alcohol is involved in about 50% or more of all automobile accidents. And think about it. When it comes to substance abuse, isn't that sort of like committing suicide if you drink and then drive, whether it's conscious or unconscious? It's an attempt, I would think. Some of you have made it home successfully after driving drunk, and some of us didn't, so we don't know which ones were attempts and which were suicides. Again, firearms, very successful. Drug overdoses, involved in a lot of them, not as successful. Hanging, suffocation issues. Why adolescents? Why do young people keep on coming up in these statistics? Again, lots of pressures put on the young. You must succeed, you must do this, you must do that. Failure to do so means your life is over, right? And of course that's not true. After the fact, those folks who have suffered from suicide attempts realize why. So what I'd like to do is tell you about a case study. And I will tell you about that case study starting with the second and final clip from chapter 8. We only have 2 for this chapter. So looking forward to telling you the story of Papa in the Garage. For those who have children watching, not the most pleasant story to hear. All right? So we'll start that off with the second video for chapter 8. Stay tuned.